Good afternoon, everyone. I have great pleasure in welcoming Vishal Jain, partner Deloitte India, for a presentation on securing digital content in the entertainment and media sector. Just to give a brief introduction and of Vishal, Vishal is partner in the risk advisory function and leading the risk advisory portfolio of digital for Deloitte India. He's based out of the Mumbai office. During his 19 plus years advisory professional career, he has gained rich experience in cybersecurity and also instrumental in conceptualizing and developing capability for critical service offerings such as digital risk service portfolio, data privacy, telecom security, business resilience, and vendor risk management. Vishal is an engineer in electronic and holds a postgraduate diploma in telecom management. He has been awarded honorary title of DSCI Certified Privacy Professional DCPP by Data Security Council of India. Over to you, Vishal, for the presentation.
Thanks, NM India and ABI's team. It's pleasure to be addressing such a great audience. And I know it's a very different kind. It's a virtual this time, but I think this has its own advantage of giving a vast reach of it. And as we move digital right from this session, and we have been witnessing this in last 7-8 months, and we have been seeing how things have changed in our own life, and where we have seen everybody moving to more from I would say a theater to a personalized to a customized entertainment. And that's where as you get more and more customized and personalized data, well, the risk around it also increases. And that's where I thought it's the right forum to share some of the aspects, especially when it comes to the digital security aspect of the digital content, and which is very critical because we see not only the data which is more from a digital content of the media and entertainment, like your videos, movies, various other social media channels and videos. They enable that OTT platform and other stuff, but also the customer related data in terms of their buying behavior, their watching pattern, what are their choices, what genres they are going through. That is also something which is becoming all the more critical. And with all the regulatory angle coming around it, when we talked about the data privacy, the security, and the entire threat landscape changing, I think this becomes a very important agenda to be addressed even in the media and entertainment industry. So when the organizations reach out to me, I think this was a perfect, I really appreciate and thanks them to bringing this topic, which is securing digital content in the entertainment and media sector. I think this is very important, and especially not only the OTT or the social media or the web platform, but I think even on the movie theater, the entire movie release is now being digital. And to the extent that one can sit at one location in office of say a theater chain or a multiplex chain, and I can actually, if security is not enabled properly, I can actually delete or restart the movie or shut down the entire movie playback in a theater sitting at one place. And that's the power of digital age of a just in time and point in time release across the globe. But at the same time, if not secured, it has its own risk and threats. So in next 20-25 minutes, I'll try to give you a perspective of more like a food for thought of why this subject is very critical. And usually security was seen more in the bank state, in the financial services, telecom, IT companies, data-driven companies. And in this sector, somewhere it always was taken more like a piracy type of stuff, which the world is really struggling to. But then as we moved in the new era and new types of channel of the entire entertainment sector, I think some of these new stuff become all the more critical when it comes to security. So going into the detail, let me just give you a perspective of the content landscape of the entire media and entertainment. So for example, if you see, content is the king today. I mean, you have your best content where you want to monetize, and at the same time, you want to restrict it that nobody should have access, and only on the day of release that everybody should be able to. So that's a very interesting. It's not a step-by-step releasing part of it. So it is confidential till that 1 minute or the last hour or the last minute when it is publicized. So it's directly from no one to everyone. That's the situation. And that's where security becomes very, very critical. So right from the time it is conceptualized, the creation, the distribution, the monetization, and archive and catch up TV and other stuff which we talk about, and we can go back and see the past content. So you see all this aspect, the entire content life cycle approach becomes very critical, and there is an aspect of security and risk around it. And the channels, if you see around it, for example, the the increasing data speed is enabling this further. The reduced prices is enabling this further. The need of the enhanced experience. We have all the new gadgets, devices, wireless iPod, wireless pods, earpods. We have the 7.1, 5.1 home theater. You have the good bandwidth of fiber to home. So you really want to get a theatrical experience at home, and all this is getting enabled. So it's a more of a, and then all these players as a service provider, you will see that they want to give more and more customer experience, a better customer experience. For example, if you see, there is, if I can talk about, for example, if I have watched a particular genre of movie or a content, you suddenly see that they will give you and select and saying, okay, these are the other movies which you may like to go through. And that's where the entire personalization, though you as a customer you feel good about it, but at the same time you're also worried that, okay, so since somebody is watching me what I am watching, and that's the entire privacy stuff which comes into picture. So there are two aspects of content. One is the content which you are selling as a entertainment stuff or the media stuff. The other is the content which the users or the customers who are generated, and you are the custodian of their personal behavior, their choices, and their personal data, financial data, all that stuff. So both these contents become very critical, and there is an obligation attached, one in your interest as a service provider, the other in the interest of customer, and both go hand in hand, because any one of them, if not taken care properly, will lead to a huge set of damages, whether it's a financial impact, regulatory, or even the brand, which is the most critical one, I believe. So if I just quickly go through what is the content life cycle which we are talking about. So if you see the entire, what I said, right from the, if I take an example of a movie or say a series, right from the scripting side, the who is right, what is the script, because that originality has to be maintained till the time it is released. And that's the security starts from there. Even while recording the production, what we have been saying and suggesting to the client, right from the time the recording happens, the shooting happens, the content has to be secured in the camera itself. And then you move to the script, then create, and then you move to the entire pre-production, editing, and other stuff which comes into picture, and that's you get to. And the method of distribution is equally critical. And this is where I was talking about that even in a multiplex, when it is released on, say, in Indian context, usually it's Friday, the Friday first day, first show, but it should be first day, first show. There should not be someone who is actually doing an N-1 or a 0-day first show or a last show, and that is something which everybody is worried about. Or it should not happen that the first day, first show is getting compromised, and it is, it is not actually happening, and the hacker has got into it and deleted it. And that's where the distribution security or the data in transit or content in transit becomes critical. And then finally, the monetization bit, because which is where the piracy aspect comes into picture. Well, there is a big challenge around this aspect, but at the same time, there are certain controls right in the entire life cycle which can be taken care of. And finally, the archive, though the risk go lows towards the archive, but at the same time, the originality and the of the content should always be given credit. So there are certain controls which is important to be taken care of when it comes to archive, that the regular stamping, who is the original author, where was it first broadcasted, telecasted, all that needs to be taken care of. So this is typically the content life cycle in a media company, and that's where the approach we take. So this is what we are living with, where we have all the ecosystem enabling us to have a good content and to provide good content across the entire entertainment industry. If I now move forward and saying that, okay, what is the threat landscape? All this is fine, but then when you talk about threat landscape, well, majority of the cyber threats you see in the media entertainment industry are related specifically to social media. With almost, I read somewhere it's 89% of threat activity being detected from this space. And that is where how should we tackle this issue? Well, I'll come to that approach part a little later. But some of these security threats become really, plagiarism of original content, unauthorized access and threat of original content, which is right from the concept stage, the script and every stuff, intellectual property, which is the piracy part, the breaches in the technology security, and this is the area, the pre-production and the content which is in making, where this becomes important. And in one of the when we interact with media entertainment and the telecom and other clients, when we talk about well, they are so much passionate about the content and the publicity. Somewhere this is not taking so much of priority, and which is when, God forbid, when things go wrong, suddenly these things become very critical, and then you realize, oh shit, I should have taken that particular interest and the security of the content as well. And the last is again very important, may not be directly related to security threat, but may lead to a security issue or a content sort of a violation, or some of the other threats is the inadequate or management of the content. So you might be doing all the right things from a production point of view, but are you actually managing it in the right manner? And that's where this is very important and critical. So we were approached, I remember talking to one of the media houses where they said that, the entire conceptualization of various series, movies, the scripts are very, it sometimes come, okay, let's go and make this movie, or let's develop this particular, compose this music, all those. And then suddenly realize, no, this is not fitting in this movie, let me keep it somewhere. So this keep it somewhere, and you put it, some in hard disk, pen drive, or at various places, a script in a hard copy, handwritten or a printed. So it's, and then, after say a couple of years or few months, you realize that, let me go back, I think that was the right script, that was the right music, let me go back and get into that. And then you realize, okay, where is it? You're not able to find that properly. And during that period, if you have not taken care where it was kept or stored and managed properly, it may happen that somebody else has used it. And that's where it pinches a lot. And I can understand, because this is a very passion-driven industry where it's a lot of originality. Everybody wants to give the best in a very different when it comes to the content. And that's where the more it is unique, the more it is innovative and personalized, it is all the more becomes very close to everybody's heart that, okay, it has to be only my stuff and not somebody else. And then the entire protection around that content becomes very important. So your management of the content itself is the base where one has to start. And that's where I deliberately put the inadequate management of content as a threat, because if this is not done right at the beginning, it may lead to some of the other threats. So what are the risks related to this? Well, I mentioned about piracy, breach. Well, brand dilution, obviously it impacts a brand at all a lot. I mean, we all have seen a few years back a famous series which was leaked before it was released, and there was a huge impact and on the brand and reputation of that. Similarly, the goodwill impairment, the financial loss, and in some cases, you see that the distrust of the sponsors as well, where the sponsors may believe, okay, if this particular media house or this particular production house or a media company has a not a very good rapport in terms of securing the content, let me think twice whether I should go to them or not. So that it is more of a long-term story which needs to be taken care of. And as we all know, this is very relationship-driven. And if this happens, distrust of sponsors or production houses, then obviously it is not something which anybody would like to go for it. And then that leads to some of the decrease in viewership and other stuff. So this is something which I think more of a threat landscape to take care of it. If I move forward on this aspect, so give you an illustration of this content life cycle and associated risk. So let me just talk about 4 stages. I'll just give you an example, like concept and finalization, concept finalization and plot discussion. So right from, as I said, script drafting and all that. So what I did, I tried to give you a perspective one level below. So is it, what are the three important factors? Actors, risk, solution. So your actors are your content creators. It could be a books, producer, authors, all this. And what is the risk? Loss of idea, plagiarism, and other stuff. And that's where the solution is. The discussion has to be in a very restricted environment. Your I would say your printed paper has to be protected. Your content in a pen drive or your laptop has to be protected very much. Though usually these are, if you see, some of these actors are pretty independent. They are on a contractual basis for certain project, and that's where you may not have a full control on their devices or on their way of working. And usually culturally the enterprise environment is very casual when it comes to working environment, because the focus is not really to get into the boundary. The creativity actually comes when you leave them free. And the moment that free happens, you have to ensure that it also is secure. And that's where you have to strike a balance between the two. If I go to the content production, and that's where some of the actors like your camera equipment, your third party vendors, again, as I said, most of these contents are very project driven. You will have independent say cameramen, choreographers, or your music composer all coming together for a particular project. And that's where these actors, again, you have to ensure that the project is secure, at the same time ensuring not getting into their independence and other creativity. So some of the risks: script manipulation. The footage can actually be leaked before it goes into the pre-production or editable. There could be certain contractual stuff which can be breached. So some of these solutions like your NDA, your secure electronic transfer, storage of data in a secure manner, hard disk encryption, some of these solutions right from the time the video recording happens or an audio recording happens at the studio level becomes very critical. So it's no more, I'm talking about digital is obviously the theme, but then there is a process around the digital content. There is a physical environment which is equally important from that aspect. When we move to the post-production, if you see the post-production where it's a raw footage processing, you do a lot of editing on various software. And some of these softwares are very huge. You require a dedicated infrastructure, high processing infrastructure. And then you require very specialized skill set, people who can do that level of editing. And that's where, when they are so much passion and focus about their the main business, the security really maybe there could be some lapses or some security or a process flaw which can happen and lead to content loss. And that is another very critical area. And this is the most critical area, because at this stage you are almost done with your content. You are on the final stages and finishing. So if the content getting leaked from here will actually have a huge impact, because by this time you have already decided your distribution partners, you have agreed your financial contracts and other stuff. So this particular stage becomes very critical from the content leakage and security point of view. And if we move to the fourth stage, which is the distribution stage, where the entire transfer of the data has to be very secure, and that's your content delivery network. And as I was mentioning, that in one of the I would say company, we actually tried to see the security of how the content is being transferred to the various I would say broadcasting agencies, or to the OTT platforms, or to the multiplexes. And we were actually something I was really shocked to see that there was a possibility that I can leak the content in between, or I can stop the broadcast, or I can actually modify the content, some of those aspects. Now here, it is more on the distribution side. I'll also touch upon here, because the moment you have publicized, you have released your content, the next comes is the focus shifting from your content security to the data from the customer generated data, which is where, when you have customers registering for a subscription, when you are giving them customized choices and capturing their watching behavior, their watching patterns, and other data about not only the customer, but also about the actors and the players and other, I would say, stakeholders who are part of this entire project, then you have to really strike a balance in terms of what is sensitive, what is personal, and how you're ensuring privacy of that, whether it could be an actor, hero, producer, music composer, and all that, but at the same time also the customer data. And we are usually engaged by some of these OTT platform players, where we, or even the production houses, where we have seen that there could be a possibility that I can access the content without actually being registered. So there could be an application security level flaw, and which is where it becomes very important. Or is it possible to download the content? Is it possible to extract the content from the mobile device and then start circulating without any subscription or like a free content? Some of these controls becomes very challenging to implement, but at the same time it's a high risk area, which I'm sure the audience of this forum, coming from largely from media and entertainment background, and they will agree that how important is it to ensure the content part of it. And so this is where I was more focusing on the movie part or the series or the OTT. But if I just slightly shift my entire focus on the social media aspect, the internet web access to some of these websites which have embedded videos and content, well, that is all equally important. And there is another set of threat which comes into picture, is the entire false websites, malicious website, fake websites, which will look like same, and but then they will be hosting a lot of I would say the pirated contents, and those becomes very critical to be watch out, because they might impact the brand and reputation of the original website or the original company. Moving to the next part of my presentation. So I spoke a lot about the threat and the security areas. Let me just touch upon some of the approach part of it. Now, if you want to have understood the threat and the security aspect, let's see how best we can actually think of securing this content. So typical approach, if I talk about, well, these are the some high level domain, I thought, let me mention fingerprinting. So right, a mechanism to embed some digital impression in the content, some identification of illegal content, some process or a contractual obligations which can be enabled. That is one area. The encryption mechanism, right, the disk encryption or the data in transit encryption, or technical limitation of the content in terms of with respect to distribution and all, that becomes important. And that could be the first line of defense, as I said, right from the time it is you start the recording and the storing the initial concept and other stuff. Blockchain is a new technology. Well, limited use case or very high, very restricted use case around this, where we talk about how the entire blockchain technology can be used for the distribution. Well, it has limited control on the prevention, but it is also more control on the detection type of it. So if somebody has leaked it out, then you know which block and where it has been leaked. Slightly more technical, I'll not deep dive into it right now, but happy to have that conversation later on. Watermarking. So this is something which you would like to continue when you have moved it to the publicized it, or you have published it, and at the same time you have moved into archive, and that time the watermarking of the content becomes very critical, because you want the audience, even at the later point of time, know who has been using it, where it has come from, what is the original source. And that is another way of some of these key areas, I would say, from a digital content security point of view. Now, when you go to the operational part of it, which is like the secure landscape, which means right at the deployment, well, there has to be a overarching content governance framework. When I say this, means nothing technical, but some fundamental rules of how to do, what are the standard operating procedures, what are the policies, what are the contractual requirements, do's and don'ts, NDA, contractual obligations, the process of transfer, onboarding of the various stakeholders, how the content will be stored, how it will be shared. The entire operating framework is something which should be the starting point. Then you move to the digital content, which means what is stored where. You map your entire life cycle to understand these are the threats at various stages, and then you define these are the controls and security, which is something which you can mention. Once you have deployed that, you have to ensure that you are implementing and you are doing a regular update, because every project is unique, every stakeholders are different in every project, and that's where this becomes very critical. And monitoring is another aspect. You identify certain KPIs which keeps you identifying, okay, this is the monitoring aspect. and these are the KPIs. It has to be monitored, so as to ensure that yes, my security and protection is in place. And some of the artifacts on the right hand side, if you see, process workflows, content security KPIs, utilization, policy procedure. Though they sound very standard stuff, but I'm telling you, when we interact, we find some of these things really missing. And sometimes the leakage happens with the weakest link or the most simplistic control which could have been implemented, but for some reason it was not, and then you realize that okay, that's a huge import, my content got actually leaked out. So there are, again, this is what I just wanted to take you through, a very quick approach on the security. It is more to introduce the subject that security is becoming critical when it comes to content security. So I'll just take a pause here because this was my last slide. Any questions? Well, I see one question on the chat where it's saying, from an economic perspective, what will be the cost of securing content amidst these challenging times? Well, it's a very good question. Cost of securing our content, there is, it's like how much you invest on security may not be enough, but at the same time, if you are doing your basic stuff, I think irrespective of what amount you are spending on that securing, it really worth, because the impact of the leakage of content will be far more on the financial reputation, and the long term will be far more with whatever spend you have done. So there is no very easy answer of how much to invest, but it is at the same time, there is a basic efforts and other stuff which becomes critical here. Another question I see is, majority of the cyber threats faced by media entertainment industry are specifically to social media. And with 89% of threat activity being detected from this space, how does one tackle this issue? So just a quick one. There is something called a deep web or a dark web. And that monitoring is very much important. So there is one security monitoring of your entire visible ecosystem. There is a monitoring of the technical logs and the components and how that is analyzing the usage behavior in the traffic pattern. And the third is something which is outside your ecosystem, which is the deep web and the dark web. Sometimes these vulnerabilities or the issues or something about the company or about the content are floating around there, as simple as the username password. And if you are keeping watch of that, you can actually take care of some of these controls. And that's why it becomes very important. Well, I see one more question as, what are the security measures to be undertaken by companies in the media and entertainment industry in order to improve cyber security and to mitigate risk of falling victim to a cyber attack? Well, just quickly to recap on the slide, which is right there on the screen. If you see, this is something very critical. Your understanding what is the content life cycle in your organization, and then starting from the very framework, policy, procedure, technical component, threat analysis, and then ensuring that is implemented. And this is something which is critical. And once you have done that and implemented, the security monitoring plays an important role. People still believe that, okay, it is a very project-based, my project doesn't have that much of spend on the security aspect, but I'm telling you again, reiterating the fact that this becomes very critical, because God forbid the breach happen, the impact is again very high. So this is a typical security approach you take. Though it sounds very simplistic like any other organization, but the change lies because the ecosystem, the technology, the components which are used in media entertainment are very different. So the way of implementing the same security related or controls or risk mitigating factors are very different, the way that needs to be implemented as compared to any other sector. And that's where the challenge lies, and that is where you really require somebody who has an experience in this sector, who understands the system, who understands the business implication, the various components in the media and entertainment, so that they can take care of these aspects. Well, I see a couple of more questions here, but I'm sorry for the lack of time which we have. Just to close on this, my humble request, being a security professional for last 20 years, focusing on the telecom, media and technology sector for the last 1 decade. And media has been a very special, and I'm passionate about this sector because it very closely attaches our lifestyle with our leisure time. So it's important that we bring security in this sector as well, because we all know the impacts are very high, and it's not that it is very less. It is very unlikely. We have seen some incidents in the last 2-3 years, which has been quite high in the uh, media space. So I think it's a good food for thought or an introduction which I wanted to give on the security side of it. Once again, thanks to the entire events and the NM India and organizing team for bringing this topic to this forum. Happy to be part of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vishal.